Welcome back to the discussion. Next, we'll look at the state of the nation. I'm joined by Mr. Sani Yabagi. He is the ADP presidential candidate. Also, Ahmed Sajo, an APC chieftain, and then Shehu Gabam is the Social Democratic Party national secretary. He joins us virtually. Welcome, gentlemen, to Politics Today.
Thank you very much.
I'd like us to begin with the statement from the Minister of Finance and National Planning. Let's get your reaction to that. It would seem that the federal government intends to borrow over 11 trillion naira, and there are concerns that certain national assets would be sold as well. How do you react to that? Mr. Yabagi, please.
Yeah, well, it's a tragedy that we are witnessing this kind of retrogression in our economic progress as a nation with so much resources, natural endowment, human capital. All the fundamentals are here that should make this country to be today developed economy, not a developing country. And when you have a nation that says that they're not going to budget for capital projects in 2023 and piling up debts to the tune of 11.3 trillion naira. And the worst part of it is that I think is it 6.3 or 3 point something trillion is going to be spent on consumption of petroleum products.
It's about
Government,
3
point something, So what does that tell you? When 30% of what you are borrowing is going to consumption, and this consumption is not in any way adding to your productivity, because our GDP since this government took over has been nosediving. When they took over, it was pushing $600 billion. Today, we are managing to reach about 300 like something billion dollars. So you've lost almost half of your GDP. So, and if you lost your productivity by almost 50%, what does that tell you about that country? So again, to come and say that you are going to borrow 11 trillion naira to finance a 19 point something trillion naira budget, then it shows that we are at precipice. And I won't be surprised if very soon we will not be knocking on the doors of IMF to come and bail us out, because we can't service our debts now. The revenue that we are making is not even up to the amount we are going to borrow. The revenue we are going to make, the projected revenue is about 8 point something trillion, of which 1.6 or something like that will come from the oil-related sources. Then you wonder, oil is where we have comparative advantage, as far as export is concerned, as far as foreign exchange earning is concerned. And all it takes is for you to be able to manage resources in a manner that it will add value to your economy. We are not doing that. We are not even able to refine this oil for us to have that value addition that countries who are serious, keyed into their economic policies, that you must add value. You don't export jobs and prosperity to other countries.
Let me go to Mr. Sajo. Is there justification for what we see now?
I don't know how to answer your question when you ask for justification, but I must tell you that we've been living a lie for too long in this country, and that has led us to this debt trap. We want to live above our means. Everybody wants everything consumable to be subsidized. Everybody that is a worker wants increase in income. And nobody is talking about increase in productivity. Nobody is talking about increase in capacity to meet up target, to deliver service. We're only talking about increase in incomes and consumption habits. We must begin to recalibrate ourselves. We must begin to ask ourselves, very deep questions about the trajectory our nation is going to. This debt trap is going to really, really, really destroy the country if it's not checked. But we can't, exit it under the system we are operating. where people expect subsidies, people expect increases in income without corresponding increase in value addition to service delivery and other aspects of our lives. I think we must begin to recalibrate ourselves. We must begin to see ourselves as a nation that is producing rather than a nation that is consuming. How that can be done, I don't know, but I know that falling into a debt trap is actually a trap that could kill the nation.
All right, let me go to Mr. Shehu Gabam, the SDP National Secretary now, and get your reactions to this. But while you do that, this statement alluded to the Minister of Finance was when she appeared to defend the MTEF at the hearing at the House of Representatives, and she gave two possible scenarios as to what exactly is happening and the deficit of over 11 trillion naira, I beg your pardon, a deficit of over 12.42 trillion naira in the 2023 budget. One of the concerns was how the fuel subsidy issue would be addressed, and that's responsible for that deficit, according to her. One of our options is that we could retain subsidy for the fiscal year of 2023 or let it go in June. How do you react?
Thank you very much. First, let me correct the impression you have created. I'm not the National Secretary of SDP. I am the national chairman of SDP, elected at the convention, and all media houses have covered, including the Channels Television. Secondly, as related to the subsidy, I think it is grossly abused. It is politics. It is a cartel that was established to siphon the resources and exploit the country. It has been on for years. Virtually every administration come up with their own defensive mechanism, come up with their own statistics to justify this subsidy, whether it exists or not. Listening to the various versions being submitted by experts, you come to a conclusion whether there's a subsidy or not. Whether it was the creation of government or politicians or whatever you call them to continue to shortchange Nigerians along these lines of arguments and debate for subsidy or non-existence of subsidy. The same current president, when he was campaigning to be president of Nigeria, have said there's nothing like subsidy. And today, this subsidy is subsisting, which is crippling the country, taking the economy on its knees, virtually disorganizing the entire economy of the country, in a country where the purchasing power of Nigeria have gone to close to 0%, in a country where we cannot feed ourselves right now, and then you are budgeting billions or trillions into subsidy that you cannot really trace to anything. So it's the failure of critical leadership to deal with these issues. And also, it's clearly said that the president is not really doing much about accountability, just the way he mentioned that he's fighting corruption. Because in the leadership where corruption is a priority, this thing ought to have been sorted out a long time ago. The issue of subsidy must have been explained to Nigeria in graphic details. Nobody will live in doubt whether there's subsidy or there's no subsidy. I just listened to the MD of NNPC. They were talking about stealing of crude oil, which he indicted government officials, government establishments that are clearly involved in the entire operations of thieving of our resources. So how do you explain this? How will the federal government defend this? How will the Minister of Finance defend this? Is there any way that this thing can be done? Is there any way you can explain to Nigeria to get satisfied that their resources are being judiciously used? Under whose leadership? Under the leadership of this government. So we are just living in pretext. We are just living in a way, doling out statistics to confuse the country, to confuse the economy, to confuse the drivers of the economy. And at the end of the day, leadership must take responsibility. We will not stop blaming the president for the entire thing that is ongoing for a decade, because it was part of his campaign when he was running for president that he would deal with this issue of oil subsidy. He said it's a fraud.
All right, Mr.
I've been a president for close to 8 years now. That fraud has not been established. So what do we do? It's still the government that is accountable to virtually everything that is ongoing. And the government must account for this. The government must come out clearly and tell Nigeria what is subsidy, why is this subsidy, why are we being subjugated, why are we suffering, why is it being imposed on ordinary Nigerians? These are clear issues. That is clear politics, clear process of siphoning the resources of the country are being defended by government institutions.
All right, Mr.
That's what
Gabam.
it is.
Mr. Gabam, let's come back to the studio now. You listened to him, and one of the points he raised was the issue of oil theft as raised by the MD of the NNPC, which was something we're going to come to as well, because largely related to that is the issue of revenue. And there are concerns of this oil theft and how it affects our revenue generation. And this is coming just ahead of the IMF's projection that we could be spending all our revenue on debt servicing. And here we are, highly placed government officials, security agencies, and religious leaders, not to mention, in fact, he would say that virtually everyone who has access is culpable in it. Is this salvageable, considering the caliber of people involved in the oil theft?
Well, what is surprising to me is that the culprits are the ones who are playing the victim in this case, because I can't understand how NNPC group management director will come and say that he doesn't, that it's the government people who are stealing, the crude oil, from Nigeria, when he is, in a position to stop it, because he has, all the wherewithal to put in place those, gadgets that can ensure that the crude oil is not stolen in the manner it's being stolen today. There are systems. If you have an organization that does not know, in today's IT, world, does not know what is happening, remotely in his assets, and he sits here, he waits for somebody to give him information, all running the organization on manual basis, or they install a system and they shortchange the system themselves. And you are telling me that people are stealing the crude oil, the same government, that NNPC is owned by who? The government. People stealing the crude oil, as NNPC is telling us, is the government. These are the security agents. That's why we believe that this is conspiracy against Nigeria by people that are privileged to be paid by taxpayers' money, and then are telling us all sort of things that you think they think we don't have brains to be able to think. So I think this issue squarely is on the doorsteps of NNPC. Because not only are they, even after NNPC has been privatized, NNPCL, they are still in charge of allocation of crude oil, because they are the ones that manage, the resources in terms of what comes to the federal government coffers. NAPINS is still under NNPC that supervises, what is happening. You have the regulatory agencies that, sprung up. Those agencies are supposed to. If they were functioning, they are working the way they're supposed to work, they shouldn't play victims to us. How did it manage that a vessel carrying almost $3 billion of oil escaped all the Nigerian security outfit that we have? It's only another country that is not even as big as Nigeria that will be able to intercept and tell us that so many vessels are escaping, the eyes of these agencies that are supposed to ensure that this crude oil theft is not. They are the ones stealing the crude oil. Because you cannot come into that environment unless you are an expert in that business. So the point I'm making is that it is President Muhammadu Buhari that should should step up to the plate and punish those that should be punished, because we can't be losing $5 billion documented by 90 year in, year out, and they say there's no thief. Nobody has been caught. Nobody has taken it before the court. Are there spirits that are stealing our crude oil? So, and again, when you talk about the security agencies, the commander-in-chief should step up, should rise to the occasion and question his troops. People that he posted into the naval officers, the air force officers, they're under him. NNPC is under President Muhammadu Buhari as the Minister of Crude Oil, Minister of Oil. The security agencies that are stealing this crude oil, they're still under Mr. President. The whole corruption is under Mr. President, immediate purview. So how can you tell me that is not conspiracy at the top? To run? That's why when we come to power as ADP government, we know what to do, because all it takes is just for you to stop this stealing. There's nothing again that you need to do in this country for us to, solve all these problems that we're having.
Mr. Sajo, Mr. Yabagi's point is almost suggesting that the government has failed to protect its assets. Mr. Kyari was speaking from an informed position, and many would believe that what he is saying, the government would be already aware. Does this suggest that the government is unable to prosecute those involved? Because it would seem that the government knows those who are involved.
I want to put it this way, that definitely, for the scale and the level of which this theft is taking place, and the fact that till this minute, like my brother here said, nobody has been fingered and punished means that something is definitely wrong somewhere. That is to be very clear. But I think I look at what is wrong beyond just the government of the day. I look at all of us as culprits because there are four things we have lost. And when you lose those four things, you lose yourself. We've lost our humanity. Today, we're not talking to each other as human beings. We are segmenting each other. You see a Muslim, you see a Christian, you see this, you see that. But forgetting that you have to be human first before you are any of those things. So when we reduce our argument as to just our position within the natural fault lines, we are misleading ourselves and misleading the system. Secondly, we have lost our capacity to build an elite consensus around right and wrong. Even when you say people have stolen, somebody will wake up and tell you that, look, okay, he has stolen, but he has taken our share. It's our turn for our son to steal. Even when you lose your sense of right and wrong, you are completely lost. And then thirdly, there's this huge trust deficit in everything. We've even lost hope in our own country, in ourselves. We do not even see ourselves as, with pride any longer. And so we have neglected all the things we are supposed to do. But the truth about it is that the level we are going, if we do not sit down, and I am worried. 2023 elections are coming. We're in an election, we're going to face an election cycle. And what I am seeing out there is that the entire political process has become so transactional that it looks like what matters in this whole political calculation is how much money is brought to table. Young people will tell you, do not sell your vote, do not. But we are politicians, we are on the field. We know that they go by the side and negotiate and they want to collect some money. People will form groups. All these groups they are doing, what are they doing? They're not doing it because they really want the political process to be sane, to be good. They want to get money. Why? How can a system that sells itself so cheaply, really produce a result that is sustainable?
Well, you've made some points, so let me, how time flies anyway, let me go to the national chairman of the SDP, Shehu Gabam, to get his final thoughts, linked from where you left it off. Mr. Gabam.
I want to thank you for this. Let me say this very clearly, that the government security agencies are not lacking capacity to generate intelligence. Anybody who assumes that we lack capacity to generate intelligence is not being fair to the country. Number two, sufficient intelligence have been generated surrounding fraud and criminal elements in the oil sector. Number three, the joint military or security operations in the Niger Delta area related to oil thievery are all multi-billionaires. How do they become multi-billionaires? And they are all under the commander-in-chief, the president, and commander-in-chief of the Armed Forces of the Republic of Nigeria. Virtually every uniformed man that has been deployed for an assignment is with the approval of the president because the commander-in-chief. And he appointed the service chief that deploys those security personnel. And so the level of thievery in the Niger Delta on the oil, there is no way the president can extricate himself from this. He's the president and commander-in-chief. He's the number one minister of petroleum. He supervised the ministry. So what the MD of NNPC have said is a direct indictment of the president. And there is no way you can exonerate the executive from this because the MD of NNPC can virtually do nothing. He's not in charge of the security agencies. We shouldn't deceive ourselves and politicize the whole thing. The whole thing have turned to a cartel, being allocated, or people being given an opportunity to steal as much as they can. That is why there's no deterrence. That is why there's no prosecution. When we continue to speak outside the fact, it will continue to haunt us just the way it has crippled the economy. It's simply because we refuse to face reality. The leadership of the country refuses to face reality. The leadership of the country is playing to the gallery. And that is why you have politicians that are politicizing the country, going on religious bigotry, going on ethnic bigotry. It's like we are a banana republic. There is no law.
Mr. Shehu Gabam, I would like to thank you very much. Sadly, we've run out of time. There's so much to talk about, but not enough time. Shehu Gabam is the national chairman of the Social Democratic Party. I also like to thank Mr. Sani Yabagi, the ADP presidential candidate, and of course, Mr. Ahmed Sajil, an APC chieftain who was also a former commissioner of information in Adamawa State.
Thank you very much.
Well, that's all the time we have on politics today. Thank you very much for your time and enjoy the rest of your evening. I'm Terry Ikumi. Goodbye.